I am Coach Sess, motivated and determined, and you are listening to Words with a Mad Coach. Okay, Mad Worlds, me, Coach Sess, and I'm going to quickly discuss a Facebook post that popped up last night on MMA Fight Camp, posted by Coach D. And Coach D went in to defend 864, the promotion out of South Carolina, but in doing so, he may have inadvertently attacked, that's how I'm going to put it, NFC and Fight Lab. And here's my take on that post. I called Coach D, so this is not a surprise. And we talked about it. And I wanted to do one thing, and that was break down his post. I'm not taking sides on a photo. I'm not taking sides on whether or not a 0-1 or 1-0 should have been fighting a 0-6. I'm not taking sides on any of that. I have my own perspective on those types of situations. So let me give you some of those points that Coach D brought up. And actually, I'm just going to break down the video. I think that needs to be addressed. Coach D is a former semi-retired MMA coach. All right, so he's still involved in the game a little bit, working with fighters, but he also has another platform in that he's trying to report those things which are MMA in the MMA field. And I just reached out to him to tell him that, hey, brother, I thought that was somewhat of a conflict of interest. In that if you're going to be, trying to bring factual information, about local MMA to the game, that maybe we shouldn't be taking positions. All right, we should be examining and stating the positions of others, but we shouldn't be taking positions, because I'm somewhat doing that. All right, when I do these audios, you can't exactly take a side one way or another. Now, with that being said, I know he was with Beast Mode. He can take any position he wants with Beast Mode because he helped create it. The same way I can take a position with Team Rock because I still work for them. Okay? But as far as what other gyms and camps are doing and other promotions are doing, then that's where it gets a little touchy, because at some point in time you're going to rule somebody out when the overall goal is to include everybody. My thing, and I explained to him my position, is that we need more promotions for the fighters. I'm always going to think in terms of the fighters. Being a former fighter, training fighters, I'm leaning toward the fighters. I don't work for the promotions, all right? I want to have a good relationship with the promotions, all of them, okay? We need more promotions, and I want to explain this to the fighters. The reason we need more promotions is because this will up your pay if there's competition for you. If you're good and you're worth, your weight, then there's going to be competition to get your services, okay? And this will also expand the field of the shows that are a little bit softer, or they tend to have softer competition. This will allow those guys to actually interact with one another and get better. When you have a relatively soft show with soft competition, and there's always that one or two killer or one or two killer gyms involved with that show, they force the guys who don't have access to, good jiu-jitsu lineage good Muay Thai lineage, good wrestling, good boxing background, they force those guys to go to other shows. They force them out of the area. I know of 2 or 3 fighters that live within driving range of 20-30 minutes of very good gyms and very good promotions, and they've never fought in North Carolina. They've never trained with any of those gyms, and they've never fought in North Carolina for any North Carolina promotion. They just choose to go out of state and fight for other softer promotions because the promotions that are near them are a little bit tougher. And the reason they don't train with the gyms, most of the time, that's just economics. They can't afford those better gyms. So with more promotions, we're going to clear up the field where if 864 and Warfare and some of the others pay a little bit better, you're actually going to attract the better competition, which leaves the bottom floor open. All right. So that guys can come in and, they're not going to make a lot of money, but they're going to get a lot of experience by taking on guys relative to their own skill set instead of going in and being smashed. And then you won't see these guys with the upside down records as much. Which brings me to the other point about that post that was made about the 1-0 taking on the 0-6. Was it a fair fight? When I saw it posted, it was posted almost just like that in an NFC community. It was just saying, hey, is this a fair fight? It did not make reference to 864. I didn't figure that part out until sometime later as I read down through it. All right, so I was on there early, so I allowed myself to receive the notifications. So every time someone would add to it, I check it out. I thought it was interesting. And after about an hour or so, that's when I kind of realized, so they were actually talking about a legitimate show. I thought this was a hypothetical. And when I went and looked up the records, of these fighters and the backgrounds, because some information came out about, the 1-0 being a good amateur. And I looked some stuff up and I'm like, yeah, he was decent. But here's what I saw. I didn't concern myself with it as being a fair fight. This is how I looked at it is, if this fight was scheduled, say 8 weeks out, I have a little bit of a problem with that, but not with the fighters. Not whether it's a fair fight or not. It's just that the promoters could, in my opinion, could do better. They would have had better access to other fighters. And, maybe it looks like you're trying to set up a guy, for a win. The 0-6 is definitely not being set up for a fall. The other thing that I saw is that, the 0-6 had tapped out in all of his fights. So, in my opinion, that's all it is an opinion. It just looks like that guy might be a bit suspect. And having him on your show makes it look like he might be throwing a fight. He never sets himself up to win, and he never gives himself the chance to be KO'd. Not that I'm saying that he should. I'm just saying it looks a little funny that all his losses are tap outs, which don't lead to a suspension necessarily. Okay, so it just looks a little funny. But I don't have a problem with it. And here's the funny thing about it. I don't have a problem with it if he was brought in late notice. But I don't know that. All right? Because I didn't see when the original card came out. All right? So I don't know if this guy was brought in late notice or he was slated 8 weeks out for whenever the fight originally was scheduled. So I don't have a problem with that one per se. I just have a problem with that fighter. And I'd say all promoters should look out for these types of fighters who, they take the lowest pay, that you have to offer them, and they fight good competition, and they always tap out. Some other points. He talked about the Fight Lab. He brought up Fight Lab's name, and I wanted him to know that, if you go to the Fight Lab group, that you can see the timeline from December 2nd, that when Fight Lab had Fight Lab 57, then on December 4th, Fight Lab was already promoting Fight Lab 58, saying, hey, who you want to see, we're going to try to get Grady Cole. Where do you want us to have it? What are some good venues? I remember all those questions. All right. Round about December 15th, John had reposted, done deal. We've got the Grady Cole, blah, 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 blah. And as far as I knew, 864 had already said that they were going to do, the first show down in South Carolina. And they had, if you go to the webpage, you would have seen that they had the first couple shows already kind of lined up. So I don't know where a rumor like that, where, Fight Lab would have been trying to shut anyone out, would have come from. But looking at the Fight Lab timeline, and that's what I'm going to go by. I'm going to go by the data that I can see. It looks like that they were already taking steps to secure a facility and start the next show. And it just happened to be Grady Cole that they returned to, which, as Michael Allen pointed out on several comments, Fight Lab's been known for Grady Cole. As a matter of fact, the only MMA show that I know that I've been to has been with Fight Lab on several occasions at Grady Cole. So I think I posted some stuff on my Facebook today, and it was from Grady Cole, so throwback, And I also brought up to Coach D about the point he made about Fight Lab asking him to cease and desist with the video. Here's what you should know if you don't know about copyright. I get all kinds of copyright infringements on YouTube. All right. Most of the time they let me play it because the copyright owner will just monetize my video, which I really don't care about. All right. Now, they have the right to tell me to stop. It's their content. Okay. Fight Lab created the content. They have the choice of telling you not to use it. They have the choice of telling you to pay them for it, to license it, or or they can just say nothing. And if they said anything, for whatever reason, then they have that right. So we're not talking hate. It was within their abilities to do so, and they did so. And just as I use any clips in my videos, if anyone calls and says, hey, don't do that, it's their stuff. And that's the one thing you need to learn if you're going to deal with copyright and sound bites and things of that nature. They can tell you to stop, and guess what? You have no choice, or unless you want them to pursue legal action against you. All right. So if you don't want that, just do as they ask. Stop it or pay them. And so, I brought that up to Coach D because I said, Coach D, you shouldn't have used that as your entry point to make a case against Fight Lab. I also went on to say that, this thing about Fight Lab being there, taking a picture or whatever at 864. And I said, did you see any shirts? Did you see John? Did you see Kenny? Did you see Al Simmons? Did you see anybody who is commonly known to represent Fight Lab? If you follow Fight Lab, Kenny, John, or Al Simmons, regardless of what their duties are or their position, you can almost associate them with Fight Lab. I don't see them representing a lot of the other promotions, all right? So I can make a strong presumption about these three. And if you see someone in a Fight Lab shirt that says staff, or or they just promote it, it's a strong indicator that person might be working for Fight Lab. Not 100%. But I asked him, did he see any of those things? And he said he heard, or someone told him. And so I just went back to my brother and I said, look here, we have a deeper responsibility as coaches, as commentators, as podcasters, as former fighters in the game. We're not traditional journalists who, stood on the sidelines and watched this game develop and can get away with saying just about anything just to get a raise out of the the viewers and the listeners. It's unfair of us to do it that way, right? Because we have a deeper understanding of what the promoters go through, what the fighters go through, and it's pretty much irresponsible for us to do it that way. Again, I already went to my brother, so I'm not chastising him. All right. I feel that I'm in the same position as him, that I can go to him. All right. If I was in the promotional business and I felt like there was something John or Kenny or Obelisk or Wable or Michael Allen or any of those guys who have done it in the past or do it now, if I felt like there's something wrong, I would go to them. But I'm not in that side of the house, so I can't talk to them about promotional stuff. I can ask questions and try to get a better understanding. All right. But I'm not on that side of the house. I don't talk to Chris Connor or Kevin Ferrant about matchmaking. All right. I'm not on that side of the house. I'm in the coaching side of the house. And right now, I'm in the discussion side of talking about all things MMA, but from a certain viewpoint. Okay. And that's all I'll try to do is get Coach D to see that we have a viewpoint. And he openly admitted, that he was emotional because he does have some investment in 864 because, that could mean big things for him. If they're bringing him along for the ride, and if they take off, it can mean big things for him. And I get that. I totally understand it. But he still should not take a side immediately, especially if he wants to get to the truth. And so that was the basic discussion that he and I had. And, we went on to talk about some other things. With more promotions being out there, the promoters just need to negotiate with the fighters. And the fighters need to learn the art and war of negotiation. You don't just have to settle. All right. With there being more promotions, you need to try to talk to see what's going on with all of them. You may not want to travel. All right. This thing about the hotels, I'll make one point about the hotels, is that I remember one of the Fight Lab shows in the mountains. I can't remember where the casino is. I can't think of it now. Owari, I think it was the Owari area. But the hotels that the guys were staying in the first time were a lot better than the hotels the second time. Because the second time we went, and Michael Allen, if you're listening to this, you can correct me if I'm wrong. The second time was because there was another event, some kind of festival, because we did the two shows in the same year at the casino, but it was different times of the year. And for anybody who's familiar with, your more cultural and artsy type communities, they have these art festivals and it's a big thing, brings in a lot of people, brings in a lot of revenue. And I remembered that the first time, driving through, it was pretty much dead. It was just your, casual stuff going on, rocks falling off the mountain, nothing special. But then the next time I went, there was tons of people. It took a little longer to get to the venue versus the first time. And then the hotel was a little further back because we didn't have access to the better hotels the second time. So, sometimes that's out of the control of the promoter. He has to do what he can. And I think that if Michael had, presented, quote unquote, better hotels, that the guys may have been driving as far as 30 minutes to an hour away to get back to the venue. And that wouldn't make sense. Okay, so it's not always, nickels and dimes as much as you think. It's all about logistics sometimes. All right. You got to put on a show and you got to run it on a certain timeline. You can't have your fighters an hour away. So I get the point that he was trying to make. I understand what the fighters are trying to say, but if the fighters are, regardless of how much money they're making, if they don't have the power to negotiate how much they make, then you're still not really making a lot of money. You want the power to negotiate, all right? Because from that negotiation, you can negotiate other things, such as maybe ticket sales, selling other paraphernalia, a promotional platform that you may not have had previously. So Don't, you can, money in itself, isn't the bottom line. It's, if you're if you're negotiating from the perspective of the coach or the camp or the manager, then you might say, hey, can I get X number of fighters on the card? Why that? Because X number of fighters on the card actually saves you gas, but gives the guys experience. Championship fights, there's other things to negotiate, because not all your guys are going to be pros. All right. So if you're talking about money, you're only talking about the pros, and that pro needs to be somebody that's a draw. Not every pro in your gym is a draw. So we're still going to talk about a limited amount of money. So let's talk negotiation. All right. That's a lot better for your gym and your platform versus, hey, can I have 3 times the amount that I made the last time? All right. And it gives you skill and ability so that when you go into a bigger market or you're dealing with other promoters, you already know what your worth is. You've already done this before. You already know how to negotiate the game. So, I listened to the 30 minutes that Coach D had to say, and I think he jumped the gun a little bit because he was heated, and he himself admitted that he had a lot of flame in his soul, and again, if 864 has picked this guy up and said, hey, you can ride with us, you want them to be successful, just like I want the entire Southeast region to be successful. Because if 864 is doing well, Warfare is doing well, Next Level's doing well, Fight Lab's doing well, Conflict's doing well, Battle in the South is doing well, all these shows are doing well. Curtis Blades is on the UFC beating up Mark Hunt, and he fought in Battle in the South. You want them to do well because it will attract better competition to the area, for one, and then 2, it will put the eyes of the UFC, the LFAs, and the Bellators on us in this area, and they'll want to come. Let me not leave out the Valors and the Spartacus down in Virginia and Strikeoffs. Elite Warrior Challenge. You guys see the last videos for Elite Warrior Challenge? They're doing well, man. They're doing well, and I love Bruce and Jeremy and Melanie. They negotiate with me. They talk to me. They don't chastise. I love those guys. Lamont Chappelle, love that. I love him. Him and Chris, they talk, they negotiate. It's not just one side's not their way or the highway. And Rich Dumbackley has always been, he's negotiated day one, even when he was the only other promotion doing anything. He always talked, he always negotiated, he always worked well. And that's what you want from all of them. Whether they hate one another or not is irrelevant. Fighters need to stay out of that category, stay away from it. Let them do what they're going to do. You negotiate with each one of them on your own merits, on your own terms, and based on what they have to offer. That is it. You want a hefty paycheck, you might have to get a hefty opponent. Don't assume that someone's going to pay you thousands and thousands of dollars to beat up a clown. Okay? Hey, I'm Coach Sess, and you've had words with the Mad Coach.